when I started my career almost 10 years ago. Feels like it's so different now to come into an level role in supply chain because of artificial intelligence. We're outsourcing a lot of those manual communication efforts or the foundations of modeling to technology. And so these entry level roles are becoming more strategic. They're using more critical thinking. And because of that, career development for these individuals is also becoming more complex.
Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the #1 voice of supply chain. Join us as we share critical news, key insights, and real supply chain leadership from across the globe, one conversation at a time.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's episode. Folks, I am looking forward to talking with a passionate practitioner and powerhouse that's doing terrific things in global supply chain. We're going to be discussing a wide variety of topics, including the valuable journeys of non-traditional supply chain careers, why it's so important to enable more and more women to enter the supply chain field, and find effective ways to empower the success and upward mobility. We'll even get some advice on how to stay prepared during these uncertain times of layoffs, trade wars, and a whole bunch more. Stay tuned for what promises to be one heck of a show today, full of actionable insights and perspective. Glad you're here. All right. So I want to welcome in a very special guest here today. Our guest has served in impactful supply chain leadership positions in a variety of some of the world's most successful and well-known brands, from Amazon to Nike to Home Depot. She's received numerous accolades for her work, including being named to Forbes 30 Under 30 leadership list. How about that? Our guest is founder of Supply Chain Gals, a nonprofit community of over 20,000 women in supply chain, where she's particularly passionate about serving as an advocate for women's leadership and mentorship. Please join me in welcoming Liz Raman, founder and CEO with Supply Chain Gals. Liz, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's been so much fun observing from afar and getting closer and closer to the cool things you're doing at Supply Chain Gals. And as I shared in the pre-show, I am a new member. I'm a new fan of Liz Raman, huh?
Welcome to Supply Chain Gals. We're excited to have you.
Well, we look forward to diving into and sharing what the great work you're doing with our audience here at Supply Chain Now. And but before we do all that, folks know I like to start with a fun warm-up question as we get to know our guests a little bit more. And you've got several full plates right now, very, very busy. And so when you get, we're talking about this a little bit at pre-show, when you get a little bit of free time, and whenever it's not spent on furthering the mission at Supply Chain Gals or doing some of the fitness stuff that you're passionate about, tennis is one of your passions, in particular mixed doubles. Is that right, Liz?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big tennis fan. I got to see Serena Williams open her building at Nike. So that was a dream come true. And
Wow.
I'd love to play whenever I get a chance.
Hall of Famer Serena Williams. Have you seen the movie with Will Smith about the Williams sisters? Have you seen that movie?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was a great movie.
Yeah, it was a good movie rather. And of course, she's a Hall of Famer now, and she is your favorite or one of your favorites of all time.
Oh yeah, definitely my favorite of all time. Yeah, super inspiring woman in tennis.
It's so true. And now, kind of beyond her professional or Hall of Fame career, of course, she's getting involved in all sorts of entrepreneurial endeavors. So, a brand new chapter for Serena Williams. I wish I could just play tennis just a little bit better, just a little bit like her, though, huh?
Yeah. It feels like whenever you see the pros, they make it look so easy, and then you're like, I can definitely do that, and then it doesn't come out like that when you're on the court.
Oh, it doesn't. It sure doesn't. And one last thing about tennis, you made a remark in the pre-show as well. We got to start recording these pre-show conversations. It's important to have playing partners if you enjoy tennis. It's not one of those sports you can just grab your racket and go play by yourself. It's a team sport, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. If you're into doubles, you have to have a great partner, and that is one of the most fun parts of it.
Agreed. All right, so switch gears a bit, moving from tennis to global supply chain, and in particular, your professional journey. I tell you, I've been doing a little bit of reading up on you, and it's amazing the roles you've been in, just so far in your career. So if you would tell us, we're not going to do your journey justice in 5 or 10 minutes here, but what's a couple of your favorite roles that you've held thus far in your career?
Yeah, I started out in transportation, operations, routing trucks at the Home Depot. That was really exciting. I got to be in the Hurricane Command Center and be part of Home Depot's world-class transportation effort. I was a self-taught senior data analyst at Depot, got to work on an executive-led B2B digital transformation after getting my master's in supply chain at MIT. Led the pricing strategy for the blinds business, which was also really fun. Then I headed to Nike, where I led assortment planning for the women's apparel team for North America, and currently a senior category manager in tech, which is my favorite role of them all because I get to combine all the little things I learned along the way.
Oh, fascinating. Look, so I got to back up. That Hurricane Command Center at the Home Depot,
Yeah.
that has got to be, you probably can't share everything, but paint a picture. What is that like? Is that like NASA's command center during these critical times of contingencies?
Yeah, Home Depot is known for their amazing efforts. People come in and study how they respond to hurricanes. And I was in the room when we had a police escorted brigade of trucks going to Florida. There were tons of storms the year that I was in transportation. So it was a great way to see how supply chain can literally impact people's lives when they're going through some of the toughest moments.
Well said. And the other thing you mentioned about that stint in your career is you said you were a self-taught data analyst. Liz, we're going to get into some career advice later in our chat with you, but that really stands out. What made you, what prompted you to kind of, invest in your career like that?
Yeah, I like to learn new things and I like to make myself a little bit uncomfortable all of the time. I would say that is something I pride myself on. In high school, it was singing at the talent show in front of the school. And it's not necessarily something I want to do. It's just that I always like to feel that discomfort because I feel like when you're uncomfortable, you're learning, you're growing, you're enhancing your leadership style. So learning Python and rolling that out, the use of Python at Home Depot was a really great way to step out of my comfort zone and learn something new. And it's something I've definitely taken with me throughout my career.
Liz, outstanding. We promise it's going to be an actionable conversation. And one of the first things that just leaps out of this conversation with you, Liz, is it's so important that all of us, and that's whether you're in supply chain or outside of supply chain, find ways to lean into being uncomfortable. That's where you can have some of those powerful life lessons, professional lessons, and find new opportunities. So Liz, I'm not going to ask you to sing here, but back in high school, what was it? Was it modern songs? Was it classical? What did you sing?
I did a lot of Adele. I do not sing for people anymore. So yeah, I'm retired from that.
You're retired. Okay. You can't do everything. All right. One other thing I want to ask you about Nike. You mentioned we were talking about Serena Williams, which, by the way, that movie I referenced, that was King Richard was the name of that. If you hadn't seen King Richard, run to go see it. It's a really great film. But you mentioned your time at Nike and how you were able to see Serena Williams open a new center, and you were talking a little more about your role there. That has got to be, I've worked for big companies, small companies, and everything in between. But when you work with a incredible iconic brand like Nike that just attracts incredible people to it, that's got to be pretty cool as a supply chainer too, huh?
Yeah, definitely. It was a dream come true to be at Nike and get to be around some of the world's greatest athletes and be part of the team that puts the gear they wear together.
So what you're describing here, and we were exchanging notes pre-interview, is you've chosen this non-traditional supply chain career where, to me, and just our time here so far, it sounds like you've really elected to enjoy a little bit of expertise in anything. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. We were talking, Baskin Robbins, which is famous for its, I think it's 37 flavors. But anyway, whenever I'd go into a Baskin Robbins as a kid, I wanted to try everything. And it kind of sounds like that's a bit of an approach you've applied to your career. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like when people think of supply chain, traditionally, they think of transportation or procurement, some of those core traditional supply chain roles. And something we say at Supply Chain Gals is if you are part of an organization that delivers a product or service, you are part of the supply chain. And there's so many ways you can be part of the supply chain organization now with roles in finance, roles in data analytics. So I have really taken the approach in my career of trying to pick up these different skills along the way, whether it was being in pricing, being in analytics, being in assortment planning, because I think it makes me a really well-rounded leader and gives me a wider perspective when I'm looking at business challenges.
Very well said, Liz. I want to back up. I think, I'm going to see if you agree with this. We've come a long way in terms of how folks view the phrase supply chain, right? Whether you're in it or outside of it. And, the pandemic, one of the silver linings there was, supply chain really rose in terms of visibility to folks that hadn't connected dots yet, why you can get stuff in 2 hours or why you can return stuff or as easy as we can and so much more. But I tend to agree with you. A lot of folks still view that traditional definition of supply chain about the movement, as opposed to, I think, what is emerging or what has been emerging for years now, a more modern definition, which to your point is much more holistic and it's much of a broader ecosystem from manufacturing or reverse, you name it. Kind of what you said. If you touch the product, right, and add value to the product, do you tend to how important is this more modern definition of global supply chain in your view?
I think it's really important, especially for the next generation that want to be involved in supply chain. And like you said, after the pandemic, we realized so many things are more interconnected than we thought. So I think it's really important to have that view and that outlook to be more proactive in supply chain and think about the bigger picture.
Liz, agreed. And especially how we talk about our industry is a big part of how we can attract folks from all walks of life, all different talent fields, because we need it all, from the creative right-brainers, if that's right, to the more engineering left-brainers, or I might have that reverse, but good stuff there. And one last point before I move on to talking about some of your other passions is you talked about the value of being a well-rounded leader. That is another actionable tip, folks. Don't stay so focused in your own discipline. You've got to be well-rounded. Talk about the value of being a well-rounded leader, Liz.
Yeah, I think when I started my career, I had some amazing mentors, but a lot of the advice I received was in supply chain, you're either an operations person or a strategy person. And I am curious. I like to learn. So I was like, I kind of want to be a little bit of both. I want to be in the middle where I understand the operations and the execution and what it takes to do that. But I also want to be part of the forward-looking strategy of how can we do things better, faster, more efficient. And I think that's kind of the spot where it is most fun in supply chain, when you get to be part of understanding how everything runs, but also part of the strategy piece as well.
Liz, good stuff. And, you're a pretty humble person, but I read in your bio somewhere that you became a strategy director early on in your career. You've been a bit of a fast mover. Is that right?
Yeah, I accepted the role to planning director at Nike when I was 26. So I have always been really passionate about learning, growing my career. Definitely.
Wow. 26. I think I was still enjoying beer and pizza. 26. Nothing strategy related. Okay. Liz, let's talk about some of your passions. And I really wish we had a couple more hours with you here, Liz. I really enjoy learning about your journey and how you view the world. Let's talk about the topic of women in supply chain. Now, I'm going to ask you what some of our viewers or listeners or dear audience members may sound like a stupid question, but I want to ask you because the why is so important. We got some folks, kind of across the spectrum that may still be figuring out why it's so important. that we bring everybody and provide opportunities for everybody, including opportunities to advance in any industry, but especially supply chain. So why is women in supply chain important to you?
I started posting content online in 2020. My little sister was actually looking for her first job out of Florida State, and we were going through updating her resume, doing her LinkedIn, filling out the applications. And she was saying, these are some great tips that you have that I didn't have access to earlier on, and maybe other people didn't know either when they're looking for their first job. So I started posting on Instagram about my career journey and career tips. And so many women started reaching out to me saying, I've never seen someone who looked like me in supply chain before. This is so incredible. I feel like I belong. I feel like I can pursue a career in this now. And people who had never been in supply chain started following me. I had one person reach out and say they followed me to give their husband career tips because he was in supply chain. They separated and now she's in supply chain. She said, no, this is actually for me too. So I think it's really true that if you can see it, you can be it. And Supply Chain Gals was started in 2021 with that very mission to help women and allies start and succeed in their careers in supply chain. So I've been so lucky to have so many amazing mentors in my career that have made me feel like it's possible to grow, to learn, to try new things. And I want others to have that opportunity too, because I think the possibilities are limitless when you have that support system.
I love that what you just shared, the answer to the why there, and several words come to my mind as I heard you talking about what started. It sounds like with a project with your sister, and it's blossomed into something incredibly powerful, but liberating, empowering, uncovering opportunities, knowing that that this is for you, and knowing you can jump in and not just find a career or get a job or find that opportunity, but you can advance, right? And while you do that, how's the phrase go? You extend the ladder down and then help others, right? On that last note, Liz, when you look at, when you survey, being in it, when you survey global industry, global supply chain, what do we need to do better so that we can really open up that pipeline of talent and provide advancement opportunities for all?
Yeah, I think it's just really important to provide visibility to the stories of women and allies, minorities who haven't traditionally been in supply chain, to make people feel like it's more attainable for them. And then also, I think the next generation is looking for opportunities to make an impact, to improve, to gain feedback, and they really want to grow their careers. So I think it's investing the time, mentoring others, and creating spaces for informal conversations.
Well, so much to unpack there. So you mentioned the next generation of supply chain leaders, and that's where I want to go next. We've got no shortage of talent development challenges, right? I was just spending time with a leader with the Manufacturing Institute that was talking about the millions of manufacturing jobs here in the States that we're going to need just by 2030, and how many, we're talking like they're projecting maybe 1.9 million go unfilled. And then you look at the global, more of a broader sense in global manufacturing. I think 10 million jobs right now are estimated by Deloitte and I think it was a Manufacturing Institute or somebody. 10 million jobs right now across the globe in manufacturing go unfilled. So we have, and that's just one important sector. What else do you think? Gaps or things we should be doing more of as we look to develop that next generation of supply chain leaders? You mentioned mentoring and also that visibility of folks in it so that we can take advantage in the right way of that see it, be it movement. What else would you suggest?
Yeah, I think a really big differentiator with this next generation of leaders is the access to technology. When I started my career almost 10 years ago, feels like it's so different now to come into an entry level role in supply chain because of artificial intelligence. We're outsourcing a lot of those manual communication efforts or the foundations of modeling to technology. And so these entry level roles are becoming more strategic. They're using more critical thinking. And because of that, career development for these individuals is also becoming more complex. So I think we have to embrace technology and embrace the change that is going to come with it with this next generation of leaders and be really thoughtful about career development for them because it's completely different than when we started.
Interesting, Liz. We're in the golden age of supply chain tech, right? In so many ways, and who knows where we're going next. But do you find that as you're mentoring folks that either want to come into the industry or they're early on in their career, that, digital natives is a phrase, my kids are, I think all three of them were born as technologists. And that's fun to talk about and really even more fun to see them in action. But as I think about that from a next generation of supply chain practitioner and leader point of view, I think my kids, when they get hired in 5 or 10 years, whatever it is, they're probably going to expect the organizations that they enter into to be pretty progressive or forward-looking embracers, if that's a word, of modern technology. Do you find that same thing?
I think organizations are definitely moving in that direction, but bigger organizations struggle with change and change management. I think there's always a mismatch from what you would expect when you start your career versus what it actually is. And you kind of have to find that middle ground of where you can thrive and learn at the same time.
I love that middle ground. So much good stuff happens in that middle ground on so many different levels. Okay. Fact check. I mentioned earlier about roughly 10 million current jobs in global manufacturing unfilled. That was according to data from the World Economic Forum and Deloitte. I want to make sure I get that right. Okay. So let's talk about supply chain gals, Liz. I really appreciate the action and investment and energy and time you're investing into helping so many. So first off, just for the 3 people out there that may be new to Supply Chain Gals, tell us about the organization at a high level.
Yeah. So Supply Chain Gals was started in 2021, and we started as a media organization, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, sharing the stories and highlighting the work women are doing in supply chain. It has since grown into an official nonprofit and professional association where we're hosting so many events for our members and individuals who want to buy a ticket and learn a little bit about Supply Chain Gals before they become a member. We've had case competition, mentorship circles, networking events, data analytics roundtable, and job search workshops. So we're always adding on new opportunities, bringing the community together to learn and grow in your career. So it's a really fun organization to be a part of.
That sounds very holistic, kind of like our industry. I love it, Liz. Before I talk about 2 of your favorite aspects related to you and your team's work with Supply Chain Gals, how can organizations that might be viewing us or listening to our conversation here, how can they jump in and be a part and support what you are doing at Supply Chain Gals?
Definitely follow us on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. If you're not following us already, you will want to. We have really fun, relatable content around supply chain, and we look at it a little bit differently than traditionally it's been viewed. We also have memberships and corporate sponsorship opportunities if you want to give back and be more involved.
Outstanding. All sorts of ways to get involved. Good stuff there, Liz. All right. So 2 of your favorite aspects from what I've uncovered prior to today related to your work and your passion for what you're doing at Supply Chain Gals is twofold. Information sharing. We all know the power of sharing information, market intel, industry perspective, you name it. And what you said earlier, amplification of the voices and the stories of women. Tell us a little bit more about both of those.
Yeah, definitely. So we recently hosted our case competition and brought in industry advisors, senior leaders from Schilling Cider, DHL, Deloitte, Partstown, and they gave advice on a real life example. And we had a team of two chefs actually, and they didn't have traditional supply chain degrees or experiences, but they found that this supply chain problem was so relevant to the challenges they face as chefs. And they actually built a friendship. They live in the same area. They're going to connect after this. But Supply Chain Gals makes it accessible for people who have never had experience with supply chain to taste it, to get involved, to meet people, to learn more about it. And then on the other side, for people who already have supply chain experience, we've had people come to us and say, coming, speaking at our events has helped them grow their confidence and find their voice so that they can navigate their way to promotions and moving up the corporate ladder. So our events are really special in how they bring people together and give them the opportunity to grow in their careers, no matter what stage they're in.
Liz, I love that on a variety of levels, but I want to pick up on something you shared towards the end of your response there. And that's, you mentioned the phrase, finding your voice. That is something that probably universally can be a challenge. And sadly, some folks never confidently find that inner voice. And it really is heartbreaking to see because it stymies their career and they miss out on so many opportunities. And then others, with the help of great groups like Supply Chain Gals, can discover that inner voice that needs to be heard, from boardrooms to interviews and keynotes, you name it. That's got to be in those moments, those eureka moments where you see people, the light bulb goes off and they realize, I've got something to say that the market needs to hear. That's got to be like what makes you jump out of bed each morning and do more of what you do, huh?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that is the most valuable part of Supply Chain Gals. I think that women and minorities have a unique voice and perspective to share that the industry hasn't heard yet. They can bring so much value and diverse perspectives. So helping these individuals find their voice is changing the industry, but also changing their lives, which is pretty incredible to see.
Undoubtedly. So folks, another piece of actionable advice, no matter how you do it, right? You tune in and be a part of Supply Chain Gals and that community on the move or other resources out there. No matter how you do it, just do it. Find that voice and share it and get uncomfortable because that's usually a big part of the process of finding that inner voice. We're going to switch over to some career and professional advice with you, Liz. We want to get you to share that with our audience. I want to start with how you can stay prepared in this current environment of prevalent layoffs and a whole bunch more. What would be some of your advice there?
Yeah, I think the job market is really tough right now because so many individuals are going through layoffs and job searching. So we hear it all the time at Supply Chain Gals that it is a tough market out there. And I think the best thing people can do is to stay prepared in advance. And I think the best way to do that is by building meaningful relationships, not just quick connections for when you need a referral or help with an interview. It's planting those seeds now. And that's why we're hosting our networking events at Supply Chain Gals. So you can start building those relationships and those connections that you follow up with that on a personal level. So if the time does come where you need a referral or help prepping for an interview, you have your community of Supply Chain Gals there ready to help you.
Love that. Let me ask you, you've heard of the acronym FOMO, right? Fear of missing out, right? I got to be careful. We all love our acronyms. Sometimes I uncover what the heck we've been talking about this acronym. What does it mean exactly? But FOMO, when you think of the event landscape right now and how that factors into how folks can stay prepared, I find at least, we'll see if you agree, it's a risk if you try to do it all, right? If you try to do it all, because that will keep you, an inch deep and a mile wide. And to your point, investing in those deeper, meaningful, and powerful relationships by maybe targeting your very finite time. You're never going to be able to make every event, virtual, in person, you name it, really targeting and dive deep. Is that something you would recommend to folks out there?
Yeah, definitely. We always share ideas on how to keep the conversation going after Supply Chain Gals events. And I think that is really, really important, but also connecting with people outside of the professional, traditional sense, where you're talking and chatting about your personal interests like tennis and things like that, like we did. I just feel like getting to know people on a human level, sometimes we forget to do that because we have so many deadlines and supply chain challenges and things get so busy, but getting to know people on an individual level helps build those meaningful connections.
Completely agree, Liz. Okay, let's talk about this on a related note. And I think you've already given some advice on this next question. I want to ask you anyway, because I'm sure there's something that we haven't touched on yet, because this is a long list. How else would you suggest that folks out there can invest in and advance their supply chain career? And certainly, one of those lessons was what you shared earlier as a self-taught data analyst, right? Getting uncomfortable, learning something new, and be willing to teach it to yourself. But what else would you advise folks to do?
Yeah, something else we talk a lot about at Supply Chain Gals is planning your career roadmap and thinking about maybe not the next job that you want to do, but the job 3 or 4 down the road, and looking at your resume and seeing what are the skills that I'm missing to get that job today. And that's kind of something that I did. And that's why I got into data analytics, because I said, I don't have any really tough technical skills to round out my background if I want to move up later on in my career. So I think it's looking at your strengths and your skills that you currently have and saying, what am I missing that could give me a competitive edge in the job market pool, or something that could help widen my perspective from its current state?
As you described that, not looking for your next job, but looking further out, it reminds me of the old driving analogy, right? When you're driving a car, your eyes, hopefully most folks agree with this. We got some bad drivers out in our audience, I'm sure. I'm not a great one. But, we don't look at what's right in front of our vehicle, right? A couple feet out. We look in a broader sense, right? We're looking, half a mile down the road. And to your point, we've got to apply that sort of mentality, getting beyond the instant gratification of what I'm doing next, and think about it more in the bigger picture, more strategic is what you're suggesting, because that's going to help us, really make the most of our career and our journey, and including finding some new skill sets that may be sitting here in 2025 we don't know we have, but come 2032, man, who knows what doors may open. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I always say there's a lot of jobs that could be the dream job. There's a lot of jobs that you could be happy at, that you could learn new things at. And I think that changes all the time. So it's really important to take that time to invest in yourself and be thoughtful about how you want to allocate your time at work.
Liz, agreed. And, and global supply chain as an industry, I mean, one of the most beautiful things I've always thought about this industry is that we bring people in from all sorts of functional areas, all sorts of other industries. For some folks, they may not realize that supply chain is a passion for them until, later chapters in their career. And that's great. That's wonderful. We'll take all comers. And we just got to, I think we've got to practice what we do already in our industry, in our personal journeys, is what you're suggesting in some ways. Okay, Liz, good stuff here today. Liz Raman with Supply Chain Gals. Let's make sure, folks, as you heard from Liz, there's lots of different ways you can get involved in Supply Chain Gals community, so many different levels, whether you want to support it as an organization or whether you want to get involved as an individual and better yourself. But Liz, how can folks connect with you and Supply Chain Gals?
Yeah, you will find us on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Supply Chain Gals. The best way to stay connected and make it official is to become a member. We have an annual membership and a monthly membership. You'll get access to all of our events and all of our career resources as they come out, from resume templates to career planning guides. And if you want to connect with me personally, you can also find me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn at It's Liz Raman. And would love to connect with you all.
Awesome, Liz. Wonderful. To beat up a tennis analogy, you've really served up an ace here today, Liz. I really enjoyed I couldn't resist. I really enjoyed your perspective, and great to finally meet you. I've been an admirer from afar for so long, and I'm so glad that we had a chance to learn from you here today. So big thanks to Liz Raman, founder and CEO with Supply Chain Gals. Thanks for being here, Liz.
Thank you so much. It's always been a dream to come on Supply Chain Now as well. So really excited. Thank you so much.
You bet. That makes our day as well. So folks, what a great show. And as I promised on the front end, Liz, beyond being an inspiration, there's a lot of practical advice, actionable advice from been there, done that perspective right here over the last half hour or so. But your challenge, your homework is you got to take one thing Liz shared, put it into practice, right? That's how things happen. Deeds, not words. That's what it's all about. So with all that said, on behalf of the entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton challenging all of our audience members, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. Meet folks in the middle. There's so much to be gained there. And with that said, we'll see you next time right back here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
Join the Supply Chain Now community for more supply chain perspectives, news, and innovation. Check out supplychainnow.com, subscribe to Supply Chain Now on YouTube, and follow and listen to Supply Chain Now wherever you get your podcasts.